going to start to try to do lives every Wednesday for our writers workshop. And most of you guys kind of know me as a gamer, but if you look on my panels on my front page, you'll actually see several examples of my audiobooks, my novels on Amazon, and also my website. So today what I wanted to go over, I went to Women of WonderCon this past weekend, and a lot of common questions that I got was, hey, I'm starting this novel, or I started writing this novel, but I'm stuck. And I don't know how to begin, I don't know how to continue writing, and how do you battle writer's block? I'm going to share with you my techniques, which often I will get in a rut. Usually I'll take a few months kind of hiatus between writing because I get super stressed, and if I get too focused on what I'm trying to write, it just churns out crap. So what I've discovered is I have to give myself usually a month or two between writing books or writing my short stories, which I write a few at a time typically, and I usually just kind of charge through those. And I thought, I'll go ahead and share that with all of you so you can check out my other tips as well. You'll hear a little overlap, but that's kind of to be expected as we update and we learn more about writing. So if you're on my Twitter, you'll notice that I was talking about actually sending my stuff off to a publisher. I was published through a smaller publishing house for a while, but that just didn't work for me because I also had to do all of my own marketing, which I simply don't have time to do because I own my company as well, and I just really don't have time to also market myself. So as I'm going through that process, I thought I'll go ahead and explain it to everybody else that's trying to get their manuscript to an agent, trying to get your query letter over to an agent, and also sending that off to a publisher and which publishers to choose. That's going to be actually our next episode. This episode, I just wanted to focus on where to begin, how to get started, and what you're going to need to do. Number one thing that a lot of people don't realize when they start a story is what genre they want to write. So the genres that I enjoy typically are sci-fi, fantasy, and thriller. When I say fantasy, I actually really enjoy a subgenre of fantasy, which is called dark fantasy, which has horror elements in the story. And that's kind of where I like to sit. I write some more what you would call high fantasy, which would be like Tolkien or C.S. Lewis, which Tolkien would actually argue about that because Tolkien was very specific. Tolkien, however you want to pronounce it, it's all you. But for him, he would argue about the elements of high fantasy having elves, dwarves, that sort of thing. So he was very specific about it. He outlined it. So if you've ever taken a creative writing course, you know what I'm talking about. What I'd like to start with that really gets my thought going is what I'm in the mood to write. So say I'm in the mood to write a fantasy. It's just really got me going. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go, what type of fantasy do I want to write? Well, I'll think, okay, I want it to be character driven, or I want to be world driven. Like I want to focus on this world with multiple characters in it. You want to write just a short summary and basically just little bullet points of what you want the story to follow, or at least an idea of what you want the first book to be about, if it's going to be more than one book. However, if you're going to write more than one book, I highly suggest you do it after you've already written a single novel. So often, young or beginning authors want to start off writing a trilogy because it just sounds like a magical number. But the truth of the matter is, you should actually focus that all on one book, even if you want it to be an epic, which an epic usually is over 60K. I want to say it's like 75K or above. I don't know the official number, don't quote me on that, but a lot of epics are very long. You can ask Stephen King about that. He writes a lot of epic length novels. So you want to say, write out some bullet points of what you want to happen in the story. You don't have to write some flowery language. This is just going to be you getting on paper or on your word processor, whatever you're going to use to write it in, what you want to happen. Goals, right? Your opening chapter, the very first 1 to 3 chapters of your book have to be absolutely dynamic and polished, because most agents and most publishers are going to only pay attention to the first 3 paragraphs, if that. If they're not hooked by the first 30 seconds, they're going to toss that manuscript right in the trash. If they spot any grammatical errors, sentence structure errors, or if the quality of writing is not on par with what they're looking for instance, if you're using, mismatched language, if you're misusing words, that sort of thing, it's going to get tossed. And this is where a lot of new writers think, I'm going to self-publish. People are a lot more forgiving about self-published, but even in 2018, people are not as open to self-published as they are people that are picked up by publishers. Because often, and we still find mistakes with people that have been published, like majorly published. I've found a lot of errors and I'm like, this got through like 3 editors? What is this? Just know everybody realizes you're a person, and when you're self-publishing, they're going to catch little things if you didn't take it through a professional editor. But believe me when I tell you, you're going to want to hire an editor. Typically, if you're going to go the publishing route, find an agent, and if that agent finds your work, even if it's kind of rough around the edges and not grammatically correct, at least if the quality is there and the quantity is there, if you've got enough of a word count, which that magic number is 50,000 words typically for most novels. Unless you're, of course, submitting short stories, and that's a different thing. Usually you want to submit to journals for short stories versus major publishing houses. So with that in mind, make sure that you're going to seek out an agent first and you have your query letter down. So like I said, we'll get more into that later. This next time I'll actually talk about getting your manuscript publishing ready. But today we're going to focus on novel work. After you've come up with a summary of what it is that you're wanting to write, you're going to outline all of your main characters. Sometimes you'll actually have an aha or epiphany moment where you'll start outlining characters and you'll get all of them outlined, like, okay, let's say in Hell's Gate, Celeste is my main character. And then, you have John and you have Matilda and you have these characters. So I would create outlines about personality traits, basically the character's motivation. What motivates Celeste? Why does she behave the way she does? What would keep her trying to find like her future, her past? What is her family hiding from her? And then I would subcategorize each character. So I would take Celeste's father and I would say, okay, here's Celeste's motivation. What is her father's motivation for keeping these things from her? And outline who they are, what they do for a living, like I said, personality traits and motivation. Once you have all of those, you'd actually be surprised how much you just fall into those characters as you start writing them. And with their motivation and what they do, you can take that and apply that to the story. So when you're writing from multiple perspectives, like I did with Hell's Gate, you can see how that ties in. So one of the major things, and I'm actually going to tie this in with something that Stephen King said. You'll hear me mention that a few times because I actually really enjoy his writing style and his writing ethic. And so his writing ethic was sit down, write, and keep writing. Even if it's not on the same book that you're currently writing on, you want to make sure that you just press through. So even if you don't like how a chapter is going through, you can actually push through that, or you can skip it and go on to the next chapter or the end of the book or the beginning of the book. You don't have to write a book in a linear fashion, but it helps for timelines. And the reason why I put it this way, and I'm a little more fluid with that, is some people write books better linear. Most people write books better skipping around on chapters. I'm one of those people that I have to write through a chapter before I move on to the next. That's just how I work. But some people have said they work better by skipping to the end of the book, or writing the beginning, or writing some in the middle, and then, coming back to that and writing some more. And that is okay. It all depends on how your brain functions. One of the greatest things that I've noticed is a lot of writers say stick to it, write an hour a day, write 15 minutes a day, write 30 minutes a day. They're absolutely right. Do that. NaNoWriMo is a writing competition. It's like a writing camp for writers to get them used to learning how to write a novel in a month. Really great. I recommend doing it. It happens in November. It will get you in shape for writing. Like, learning how to write an entire novel in a month is insane. So things that help when you're stuck. When you're stuck, a lot of times people think I just need to sit down and stare at this blank page and just type crap and get angry and throw things and yell and whatever. But that's not how it works. I found if I just kind of get away for a day or two and I either do something else, like go out, go run, go out, go bike ride. I'm a physical person, so I like to bake, clean, exercise, do something to get my mind off of that so that I can think about it and then come back to it, and that really helps me. But if I'm experiencing more of a creative block where I'm just kind of stuck and feel stagnant in the story, and I'm creative but I want to write something else, what I'll do is I'll usually go write up a short story, or I'll write like a children's story or something like that, just to get my mind and the creative juices flowing in a different direction. Once I've done that, I find I can come back to the story and actually write something that I didn't even think about or expect. Which brings me to my next point. Creative writing workshops are excellent for this. A lot of times they'll have workshops where they'll assign you to write something that's completely different than what you're used to. And by getting your brain to think about other things than what you normally get stuck in, like my stuff tends to be dark and gritty, and also like to add in a lot of dry, silly humor. And if I write something else that I'm not used to, it makes your brain more flexible. So you start really thinking about, how can I incorporate this and start writing something like this and also apply it to the story? So I thought, since we're doing these writers workshops, I'd also mention that I really love doing audiobooks, and I thought I'd let you guys check out some of mine. Now, I have these posted on YouTube, and my Conclusion to Vengeance, I don't know if you've heard the first two, but the Conclusion to Vengeance will be up this month, and I started recording that a little bit today, and hopefully have that completely finished by the end of the month so I can get it up to you. I'm excited. So I thought, after our writer's tip, I'd first assign something for you guys to try out, and then I would play this audiobook for you. This is all written, the sound effects, and voiced by me. So I'll go ahead and broadcast that today. And I'll probably broadcast one each week. I also do podcasts as well. And this year's podcast, we did a vote, and someone several people, because we did a vote on Twitter, wanted to do Japanese horror movies versus American horror movies and what the differences are, like culturally and philosophically. And we're going to go ahead and cover that in this next podcast, which I've done one over it before, but we didn't, completely cover some of the things people were wanting to hear. So I got that from everyone, and we'll do that this year. So I'm going to go ahead and play for you an audiobook. It's about almost 29 minutes, so close to 30 minutes, and it's called Red. Now, this is going to be one of those not safe for work kind of things, so you might want to either turn down the volume or listen to it later. You can also listen to it on YouTube as well. It's going to be about a serial killer, and as I stated, mine can be a little dark. So I hope you guys enjoy that. And this week's Writer's Challenge, let me pull over to that because I completely forgot to do it. I'm going to set this up on my website, which I linked earlier, but I'll go ahead and link over to you in just a second. Once I can get over to my darn page. There we go. So I'm going to do a post on my website here. And for this week, I want you guys in the writer's workshop, if you want to participate every Wednesday, we can kind of challenge each other and share our stories. This week, I wanted you guys to write from the perspective of something that is non-human. That can be any genre. It can be any type of story. It can be a short story. It can be the beginning of a novel, whatever you want to do. And send that to me. We'll post it. We'll talk about it. And, hopefully we can get some more people in the chat and kind of work on each other. So enjoy the story, and I hope you guys found this enlightening. All right, guys, that was the end of Red, but you can find all of these on YouTube. If you'd like to check out more, go ahead and turn on our video here. Hi. Okay, so if you'd like to check out more of those, they are on YouTube for all of you lovely peoples. Expect more of those this year. And I'll be going to a few conventions this year, probably A-Fest, not for sure on that one yet. I'm waiting to hear back from them, which happens in August. I think it's actually August 17th weekend, but don't quote me on that. I've thought about going to Texas Frightmare weekend, but that's coming up pretty soon. That's in May, so we'll see. I'll definitely let all of you know. But just to kind of catch up with what we were talking about, I gave you guys something to work on, and we'll go ahead and post that up on my website. But basically, I'm wanting you guys to write from the perspective of something that is non-human. And it's up to you to decide whether that's an inanimate object, whether it's an animal, whether it's a space alien, planet, whatever you want to write about. And we'll go over that during our next creative writing session. Next Wednesday, we'll talk about getting your manuscripts ready for an agent, for publication, or for an editor, whichever route you're going to go, whether you're going to self-publish or go through a publisher, and all the items you're going to need for that. Follow me on Twitter and YouTube, as well as my website, and I usually update all of those sorts of things once a week. We'll be doing podcasts this year as well, more audiobooks, and of course, we're on Twitch, so more games. Enjoy your Wednesday and have a great day. Bye, guys.